Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast, where we will explore the cause and effect of just saying yes in your everyday life or in business. I will dig into topics that are not just stimulating, but will challenge you to be better in everything you do. The podcast is based on the simplicity of saying yes to opportunities you might encounter every single day. I'm your host, Jim Riley. Join me in my first series titled Blue Collar Redefined. Welcome to the show. On today's show, I get to interview my mentor and life coach, David Melzter. And, David's been asking me when I wanted him on the show because he's been there since the beginning. And I don't know if I was just nervous or if I was waiting for the right time. But the time is now. I just recently launched my new website called livelifedriven.com, which David has been a tremendous help and inspiration for me to put that together, where I can focus on my life coaching and business consulting projects across the country, which I've really enjoyed the last few minutes. So I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I enjoyed my time with him and learning a little bit more about his history. There's always something to take away from David. And by the way, his book that he'll talk about, Game Time Decision Making, is launching in a couple weeks, and it's already been named top business book for the summer of 2019. So please enjoy this interview with David as I spend time with him down in San Diego at his beautiful place in Pacific Beach. All right, hello and welcome to the Answer Yes podcast. I cannot believe I'm in your place, Dave, and with you in person.
This is so awesome. I always say the answer is yes, and how?
Yeah, and how is probably the bigger question. So the nature of the show, we talk about our experiences in life and where we've been to, and because we want to give advice to people that are listening to the show that are trying to make a decision. Maybe they're just getting out of high school, getting out of college, not really sure what they want to do. I want them to hear our stories and how we made it and the things that we've said yes to in our lives. So I always like to dip all the way back to maybe your first job or the first thing that you did to earn money, because I think it's fascinating where we all started from. So can you tell us?
As you get older and you let go of your ego, some things come to your awareness. And the truth is, the first thing I did to make money, I wanted to be rich at 5 years old, 6 kids, single mom, 2-bedroom apartment in Akron, Ohio. I made $5. I was fast and little and innocent. I made $5 for running a paper bag up to Lawson's, dropping it off, collecting cash, and running it back to this guy that lived in the complex that we lived in. Now, obviously, I'm older now, and I realized that I was a runner, probably a drug runner, and didn't know it. Luckily, it was so long ago, it was probably just marijuana, which is now legal. But I was entrepreneurial in the sense that, at 5 years old, I was always interested in having my own money and making money. And the real reason I wanted to be rich was to buy my mom a house and a car, which truly, I was a born sales guy. So my jobs went from, running marijuana, I guess, at 5 to selling lemonade, garage sales. Then in college, selling encyclopedias for Britannica, which was really like the first finance thing, because I learned about leads and I learned about emotional attachment. So they hired me, and I made more money than any of my friends in college, and I was playing football, because I'd get 2 appointments 3 nights a week, and they would buy leads from hospitals and of new parents. And then you would go in and say, my siblings all went to the Ivy Leagues. I'm a scholarship guy, only got 1 B in high school. And the reason is my single mom read to us from the time we were born. We had encyclopedias available. And for $45 a month from now until your kid's 18, you can have and they'll ship new books. That was the thing. But you can imagine it was, finance. It was an expensive sale, and I was making 20% commission on that. But I was closing deals by emotionally attaching to people, using my credibility of coming from an Ivy League family, blah, blah, blah. Then in law school, I wanted to make more money. So before I went to the law firm down here in San Diego, I worked at Roadrunner Sports on incoming sales for, New Balance tennis shoes and Thurlow socks, and I was their top sales rep. I made more money selling than actually practicing law when I was in law school.
Wow. Now, you mentioned you wanted to buy your mom a house and a car.
Yeah.
Was that all the way from an early age, or was that
5.
later on in life? Literally from 5
From
years
5.
old?
So what happened was I was a super happy kid. My dad was my hero, and he left. But I still loved him. And it's really hard for me to tell you this, but I actually used to, from a very young age, look down on my mom. Meanwhile, she's working 2 jobs, single mom, 6 kids, second grade teacher, puts us into a station wagon with a packed dinner lunch in a paper bag so she can fill turnstiles at the 7-Eleven to fill up greeting cards, and hear her sons in the back going, "You're such a loser. How come you can't be more like Dad?" And the only time I wasn't happy, though, is I'd see my mom crying because sometimes we had to use food stamps. Sometimes we didn't have enough money. Sometimes she had to borrow money in a shameful way from her parents or whatever. And I just, in my head, although I looked down on my mom and I loved my dad and I didn't understand he wasn't paying child support and it was the 70s and he made a lot of money for himself and wasn't even helping us, I couldn't even imagine the humility of my mom never saying anything to me bad about my father until later in life.
Yeah. So financially, you guys really struggled. So for
Really?
you to go out and work and earn money and have that vision of, I want to buy my mom a house.
Yeah, that's what drove me, literally. And it helped me because I think in business, a lot of people romanticize passion and purpose and they forget about profitability. Like, you can't be in business unless you're profitable. And you go down this like whole lifestyle of romanticizing making money when, look, passion itself is a product. It's a consequence. It's a solution. And so I, from a young age, out of necessity, and I see a lot of successful entrepreneurs that don't go to high school, don't go to college, just are grindstone guys, but they're very focused on profit. They see clearly, if I buy at this price, you see a lot of guys trading cars, a lot of guys, like really wealthy guys who just literally know how to create a margin. And that to me became a simple philosophy in business. I wasn't going to do it unless I was going to be paid a lot to do it.
Yeah, sure. So let me ask you this: at an early age, you're working, earning money. What is your mom saying about that? Is she encouraging you to make money? I know you got siblings. Were they out making money too, or what was the family dynamic?
That's a great question. So I always joke around, but my mom believed that the fetus wasn't fully developed till after graduate school, and it was doctor, lawyer, or failure.
Yeah.
So for me to be entrepreneurial, my mom would literally, you can do whatever you want after you do your classes, after you study, after you read this. And it was always an extra additive. Now, she used to joke around that I'd either be very wealthy or in jail. That's kind of what she saw about me, right? Yeah. But, she was not entrepreneurial, didn't know anything about business. My dad was entrepreneurial, so it became a negative type of perception of, hey, it's all about security. It's about working hard, studying hard, no shortcuts, no entrepreneurial dreams.
Right.
Simply, look, you're smart enough to go to law school or medical school. You're going to make a really nice living, and you'll buy your mom a house and a car that way.
So you went off to school, were an entrepreneur during your college years, talking about encyclopedias and stuff.
For me, well, that's the only entrepreneurial thing I really did, because what I did in college was played 2 sports. I thought I'd be a professional athlete, professional football player specifically. But when I got ran over my freshman year by Christian Okoye, the Nigerian Nightmare, I changed my mind and decided I better start studying. And I literally was lying on my back on the field thinking doctor, lawyer, or failure. And
this hurts really bad.
And I know what the show's about, so I really have to tell the story that most people don't know what they want to do, let alone if they do, they don't know how to get it. So I was one of those kids. I was going to med school to be rich. Until I went to visit my brother doing his residency, I didn't realize doctors had to be in hospitals. Meanwhile, I hated hospitals. So my brother gave me one of the best pieces of advice to change my life, which is be more interested than interesting. Right? I was 18 years old, and I see it all the time because I have a lot of young people that want to be me, want to, notable sports agent or a TV show or a podcast, whatever it is, or author, a speaker, influencer now, right? But they have no idea. Like I had no idea at their age. And so I really encourage people to be more interested than interesting. Intern, ask questions, really make it your sole purpose. Use the internet to find out and get the situational knowledge of exactly what you're going to be doing and how you can get it.
How do you teach people to practice that? Because that's hard to think about day in and day out, right? But it really does resonate if you can take the time to do that.
The rule that I was taught by a football coach was one more. And so because in that transition with the lesson that my brother gave me, I remember at a point of exhaustion in the bench press, like when I was working out, my coach would be like, one more. Like, meanwhile, I had just given it all I had, and somehow there was one more there, right? And I remember saying, if you just do one more all the time, imagine where you're going to end up, right? I don't get choked up because I started my head going, one more question. All right, one more. Don't just look at the surface. Just one more click, right, as I got older. One more person, one more sale, one more. And this is a more interesting than interesting philosophy. It's just one more.
Sure. What was your first big career move?
So the first big career move was in law school. I'm profit oriented. I wanted to be rich. I go to a law school, and I'm more interested than interesting to show you how it works. I do all this research to find out what's the highest paying job out of law school. And it's an oil and gas litigator, right? Working for the big oil companies and litigating. So I do the research, find out who has the best maritime oil and gas program in the country, Tulane. And so I worked really hard to go to the law school of my choice. Besides Stanford, every law school took me, and Stanford rejected me for undergrad and law school. Of course, that was my first choice, which is a whole nother lesson. Yeah. But Tulane still today, if they gave me a scholarship to go to Stanford Law School, I'd go to Tulane and pay every penny. That's how perfect of a match it was for me. When I graduated law school, I had 2 job offers: to be an oil and gas litigator and make a ton of money and buy my mom a house and a car, or sell legal research for a legal publisher on the internet. Now, the internet's so early that most people don't even call it the internet. Yeah. And so I asked my mom what I should do, and she told me without blinking, you better be a real lawyer, because the internet, it's a fad. It's not going to last, and you do not want to bank it. Yeah. And I think it's important pragmatically to know that in my head, I got hired there because of my sales. They were really curious, like, how's a kid that is top of his law school, maritime lawyer, but yet he's selling tennis shoes and he's selling encyclopedias. So you never know where you said yes and where you experienced things that would make the difference in your life. Sure. That just makes you stand out of 2,500 resumes, because they only were going to hire people with 4 years of legal experience to take this job. But because I was the only one in the pile that had true sales experience, because everyone else was lawyers, right? Yeah. That they're like, you know what, we'll interview them. And then when they met me, they're like, oh my God, if this guy can sell. In fact, real quick, my vice president, when I got the job, the last interview, executive vice president Lou Lombardi, he said, give me a picture of your girlfriend. And back then you carried them in your wallet. Yeah. There was no phones. Yeah, sure. So I pull it out, and he looks at it, he goes, you're hired. I'm like, what? He goes, if an ugly F like you can get a girl like this, you can sell anything. That's literally what he said. Awesome. So that sales ability, I end up taking the job in the internet. 9 months out of law school, I'm a millionaire.
But, and I want to stop you there real quick, because I think it's important for people to understand where they're at in life. And no matter where you're working at, you can create value for yourself. I always use the Starbucks employee as an example. I go there every day, right? Sometimes I'm looking for an employee for my own company. I go, wow, this person has something, right? And for you, that carried through into your job interview from what you were doing before. I think people undervalue that.
Me too. And I remember my aunt, who was one of my mentors, and she started her own advertising agency, did extremely well, multimillionaire. And back when a lot of women didn't have their own companies. But I remember her always saying, I look for the kids that have it. I'd ask her, like, what do you hire for? I'd look for it. Yeah. And she goes, you have it. And she would tell me that. Sure. And now that I'm older and I hire so many people, right, and I have great interns, I look for the kids that have it. And that's why they'll drive me. And because that's an easy way when I get a good, in California, when you drive, it's a good hour or 2 hours. Yeah, but I can find out if they have it or not and see, where that energy and understanding can be. And that's where you want to hire from.
Yeah, for sure. So you made the $1 million. You bought your mom the house and the car. Was she surprised? Was she? How did that go down? Because that's every son wants to do that, right?
I got to say that was part of in the contributing factor of me getting even more lost, is because it just reaffirmed that money bought love. I felt as if my mom loved me more. I felt as if I was her favorite. I felt as if that I got so much attention in a crowded space in my family because of all these hyper academically intellectual people that went to Harvard, Penn, Columbia, full scholarships, blah, 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 blah. All of them hyper accepted in their fields. And yet I stood out because I was the only one to play a college sport and the only one to be an entrepreneur and a millionaire that young. And then, of course, being as pragmatic. Now, later on in life, I was a philanthropist, but for the wrong reasons, right? I traded everything. I bought my mom a house, I wanted, but there was so much of a bargain in there. Like, I wanted to separate myself and be superior to my siblings. I wanted her to love me more. I wanted her to know how much I loved and appreciated her, which would have been a great reason to do it. But there was so much more that I tagged on to everything I gave to people, including my mom.
Yeah, wow. It's a heavy lesson to learn.
Yeah, it really was.
Talking about your career, moving out of that legal spectrum, Where did you go and why?
Yeah, so number one is you've done in your career, there was an exit. So 3 years into my career, we sold the company to Thomson Reuters for $3.4 billion in 1995. Most people don't realize now